So last week, Tucker Carlson interviewed Mike Huckabee, the US ambassador to Israel. And during the course of that interview, Mike Huckabee said something that's created somewhat of an international firestorm in the Middle East. I'm going to play that clip and tell you what I think.
You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. And that would include like basically the entire Middle East.
Christian Zionism. I want to go back because that's where we started
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
Okay, so essentially what Tucker Carlson is outlining there is this sort of cartoonish map where you have Greater Israel taking over almost all the Middle East, and Mike Huckabee's reaction to that is fine. Now, Mike Huckabee would try and walk that back later in the interview, but at that point, the damage was done. So I want to talk about this idea of Greater Israel a little bit more. Now, I'm not here to tell you that no one believes in this. What I am here to tell you is that all of those people are wrong, and this map that keeps going around is a fiction. It's not in the Bible. So let's have a look at what the Bible actually says. Genesis 15. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your offspring I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates." The first thing we need to address here is the Bible never says that Israel will have borders that go all the way to the Nile. The Bible does not have a word for the river Nile, nor did the ancient Egyptians. It's simply known as the river. And the river described in Genesis 15 is not the Nile. It is in fact a wadi that goes between Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula, basically marking the border of Egypt. And this is clarified in Exodus 23. "And I'll set your border from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I'll give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you." What God is giving Israel here is a land that borders Egypt, not vast swaths of Egyptian territory. Remember, they're told to leave Egypt, not take 30% of its territory. So this is good news for Egypt, but what about everyone else? The other problem we're having here is we're juxtaposing a modern map on ancient literature. When God promised Abraham this land, he wasn't sitting there with a MacBook and Google Maps. He was describing the route that he himself had walked via foot, which is a much narrower strip of territory. And while this may sound like bad news for Syria and Lebanon, it's really important to understand that everything Abraham was promised here was actually fulfilled during the reign of David and Solomon. Check out 1 Kings 21. Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. Verse 24 says, "For he had dominion over all the region west of the Euphrates, from Tifsah to Gaza, over all the kings west of the Euphrates, and he had peace on all sides around him. And Judah and Israel lived safely from Dan even to Beersheba, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, all the days of Solomon." What's really important to notice here is that what King Solomon is not doing is annexing territory and settling it with Israelis, displacing the previous inhabitants. He is in fact ruling over pre-existing nations with their kings and governments paying him tribute. And it makes the distinction that the people of Israel are living from Dan to Beersheba, which, by the way, is exactly where the Israelis live today. So what we see is this promise to Abram was fulfilled, not by the erasure of all non-Israelites between Egypt and the Euphrates, but by Israel being this regional superpower, this regional hegemon. Now, you might be concerned that if somebody believes this previously fulfilled prophecy as a template for the future, then Israel could aspire to be a regional superpower that could project force from the border of Egypt all the way to the Euphrates. But that is already the reality we live in. The good news is that when David and Solomon were the overlords of this entire region, there were people known as Philistines living there, which means the strength, safety, security, and prosperity of Israel does not have to mean the erasure of the Palestinians. Nor does it have to mean the suffering of the Jordanians or the Lebanese or Syria or Egypt or Saudi Arabia. In fact, if we look at biblical prophecy, it has a great deal to say about the future well-being and prosperity of the entire Middle East. Check out Isaiah 19. In that day, Israel will be the third with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing in the midst of the earth, whom the Lord of hosts has blessed, saying, Blessed be Egypt my people, and Assyria the work of my hands, and Israel my inheritance. This is describing distinct nations prospering together. Then Isaiah 60 says, A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels of Midian and Ephah, all those from Sheba shall come, they shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall bring good news, the praises of the Lord. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered to you, the rams of Nebaioth shall minister to you, they shall come up with acceptance on my altar, and I'll beautify my beautiful house. Now you might not immediately recognize those names, but Midian and Sheba are both sons of Abraham who settled western and southern Arabia. Nebaioth and Kedar are both sons of Ishmael that settle central Arabia. In fact, the Yas tribe, who are the ancestors of the Emiratis, come directly from Kedar. This is true for the Saudi royal family as well. So perhaps this increased interconnectivity we're seeing between the Gulf states and Israel is actually the precursor to the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. So this absurd map you see of Greater Israel is a fiction. It's not sound foreign policy, and it's not what God ultimately wants either. As Christians, we shouldn't be chasing apocalyptic visions of some final battle, nor should we be advocating for the well-being of Israel at the expense of everyone else in the region. Instead, we should be pursuing a win-win scenario where Israel and all its neighbors are living in peace and prosperity.